Cool. Thanks, Tomo. Yeah, this is going to work with background noise and all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure. It'd be nice if we could all be unmuted, but to see how we go, it's pretty noisy. Might have to mute everyone, Tomo. Yeah. All right, cool. We'll try and open it up during the presentation to try and have a little bit of conversation. I wanted to try and be as interactive as possible, like we were all in the same room, but that's obviously going to be a little bit difficult. But we'll see how it goes. We'll try, and if it doesn't work, we'll move on. Yeah, first of all, for those that don't know me, obviously my name's Andrew Summerville. I'm CEO at the Wolves, but also coaching the men's SEABL team, and have done a little bit of coaching before, and wanted to talk to you guys today a little bit more about how to coach, not what to coach. I've run a lot of these sessions before, and I used to be the coach accreditor for Basketball Victoria, and I've run probably over 100 coach accreditation courses. And the thing I always get asked is about drills and you know, can you teach me some drills, and what drills can I do, and what's a drill I can do for this. And I've started to learn over the years that coaches focus a little bit too much on drills and not what to coach and how to coach within the drill. You know, I tell coaches that when it comes to basketball drills, jump on Google, jump on YouTube, type in basketball drills, and you'll be there for 10 years. But what that doesn't tell you is how to coach within the drill, some of the terminology you use, some of the teaching points, the athlete engagement, some of the little tricks and tips that you might use to engage your players within the drills. So for me, I want to focus a little bit more on how to coach rather than what to coach. You know, I see it all the time, and I see it when I walk through our gym and see us at Wobble practice, and we've got coaches running great drills, but I'm not sure the players are being taught within the drill, if that makes sense. I guess there's a couple of topics that I wanted to sort of cover off today. The first one being around communication and athlete engagement. And I realise the irony of me talking about communication and you guys not being able to talk back to me. So that's not lost on me, but unfortunately, that's the nature of it here. But I guess when it comes to communication, and I might just try and open this up here in a minute, Tomo, because what I'd like to do is just get your thoughts on, you know, and we'll just randomly shout it out, put your hand up, we'll see how it'll work, I don't know. But just what you guys think are important parts of communication. And I'll give you that might be, but if any of you guys just want to shout out some ideas around communication and effective communication, I'd love to hear what you guys think it takes. Don't be shy.
All right, so Andrew, I'll say something then. Just when you're talking to different age groups, is there different tricks to talk to your SEABL athletes compared to, say, an under-12 boys team?
Yeah, well, I guess that's what I'm asking you. What do you think is important when it comes to communication? And I guess the question, in a sense, probably knowing your audience is important. Anyone else? What do you guys think?
There's a bit of background noise, Andrew, so I'm just trying to get everybody open.
Well, it doesn't look like we might, I don't know, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do it. But I guess what I want to know is what coaches think is important when it comes to communication. Around eye contact, body language, knowing your audience, like Nixie just said, being able to, you know, a little tip and trick that I hear coaches talk about is getting down on your players' level and talking to them, you know, face to face and things like that. You know, we also talk about things like the volume of your voice, the cadence of your voice, the flow in which you communicate. And I think, you know, a lot of coaches are often, you know, sort of talking at the players rather than talking to their players. So I think, you know, communication is real key when it comes to coaching. One of the things that we really want to focus on, now with communicating with our players is one of the things I've found that coaches don't mention when they talk about communication is they don't talk about listening. So it takes two parts to communication. It takes two things to communicate. And listening is probably a pretty important part. And I don't think us coaches do enough listening. We do a lot of talking, we do a lot of telling, we do a lot of instructing, but we don't ask our players, we don't listen to our players, and we don't engage them as well as we should. Hence why I was trying to engage you guys a little bit tonight, because it's obviously not working, but I think being able to take feedback and communicate with your players is really, really important. Some of the ways that we can communicate with our players and get feedback from them is simply just ask questions. So we start to move into something that's called athlete-centered coaching. So athlete-centered coaching focuses on essentially the athlete and what they're going to get out of it and what's their level of engagement, rather than coach-centered coaching, which is about the coach and everything's about me and do what I say. And I'll give you some examples of coach-centered coaching, and that's do what I say. I'm the coach, and if you don't like it, you're going to do push-ups, or you're going to run, or this is the drill, we're doing it. I don't care if you don't like the drill. I don't care if you think it's a boring drill. We're doing it. That's athlete-centered coaching. That's coach-centered coaching, and that's kind of how we used to coach back in the 80s and 90s, the old footy coach mentality that if you don't do what I say, you're going to run and you're going to do push-ups. That's not how we coach anymore. The way to coach these days, and athlete-centered coaching, revolves around asking questions of our players and asking them what they want to do and getting buy-in from them. I think as humans, we all know this. When we have a say in what's happening and we feel like we have some sort of control over what's going on, we tend to buy in a little bit more. And whether that be, you've all got those friends that you go out to dinner with and all they do is talk about themselves and talk about what they've done and their kids and their work and their problems and their life, and they never ask you about yours. And I think that's what we've got to remember as coaches. We're often always doing all the talking and doing all the telling, and we never actually stop and engage with our athletes and ask them, what do you want to do? What do you think is the best thing to do in this situation? Why is this important to teach this skill? Or why am I asking you to do this? So I think we've really got to change the way we communicate, where we're not talking at our players, we're talking to our players, or we're talking with our players, I should say, sorry.
And just on that, Andrew, sorry, just one point was raised by Nat Nichols, just in regards to particularly dealing with girls, for example, and having getting them to buy into what's being sold. Nat, did you want to expand on that a little bit?
Can you hear me?
Yep, far away.
Okay. No, just to say that for myself, I find that if I can connect to the kids as individuals, then I'm going to get them to buy into what we're doing more. And so far with the under-18s, I ask them what their biggest issue is, what do they want to gain out of this season, and 90% of them are saying that they've got confidence issues and that's what they want to build on. So I think for me, it's really, as a coach, I find it's really important to work out what the kid, like you were saying, Andrew, what the kid wants to gain from the season. It's not necessarily what you want as the coach, and you're only going to get the best out of them if you're working out what they need to achieve from it.
Yeah, and I think the key is, a lot of times we guess as coaches. We think we know what the kids want. We think we know. We tell them what we're going to do and tell them what the season's going to be about. I guess my key message, Nat, and everyone, is we've got to ask the question, what do you guys want? Why are you here? What do you want to get out of this? And certainly then start to ask about, feedback on yourself. Why was this drill boring? Why don't you like this drill? What don't you understand about this drill? And I think you've all been in this situation, coaches, where we start a drill and it doesn't work. So we re-explain it. It doesn't work. We then do a demonstration. It doesn't work. And then we go through these phases and then we start to get angry, and then we start to get frustrated, and then we yell, and then we make them do push-ups, or we make them do laps around the block, and we've wasted 15 minutes, all because we didn't communicate properly. What I try to do is, with my things, when I start a drill and it doesn't work, I'll then try to re-explain and maybe use different terminology or break it down and dumb it down. But then after that, my next step is not to necessarily get mad and Seb will probably disagree with this. He probably thinks I yell all the time. But my next step's not to get mad. My next step is to ask a question. What's wrong? What don't you understand about the drill? Why don't you like this drill? Because I think sometimes we get to the point where we're making them do push-ups or making them do sprints, and we're wasting time where we could have resolved the problem 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes early just by asking a question. What don't you understand? You know, why do you think it's important to do things this way? And I think we've got to ask open-ended questions as well, because if you're a kid, a 10, 12-year-old kid, and a coach says to you in front of all your peers, if a coach says, Does everyone understand? Or you got that? Let's go. You're not going to be the one kid that puts your hand up. If you don't understand, you're not going to be the one kid that puts your hand up and say, well, actually, coach, I don't. Because you're worried about how your peers are going to judge you. And if you're the one kid on the team that's particularly might be new or might not be as experienced as others, they're the ones that need to ask the question, but they're embarrassed to because they don't want to be judged by their peers because they don't understand. So if you ask a closed question like, has everybody got that? Or do you understand? A yes, no question. They're all just going to go, yeah, I understand. And then they're going to go out and do the wrong thing anyway. So I think you've got to ask, you know, questions that engage them a little bit. Things like, why do I want you to do it this way? What don't you understand about this drill? Why is it important that we run this way or do this? So I think you've got to ask the right questions rather than just ask a question. A lot of coaches struggle with athlete-centered coaching initially. They think it's just about asking random questions at random times. But I think it's really, really important to stop and ask your players, what don't you like about this drill? What was wrong with it? Why aren't they getting it? And get some feedback from them.
And is that similar to what your thoughts were, Jason, in your message? Jason Powell?
Am I on?
Can you hear me? Yeah, got you?
Yeah. So one of the things I often start with, so this is more in a game situation or even in a scrimmage at training. One of the things Trigger taught in skills was to ask the kids what they see out there. So, you know, they may have made a mistake from your point of view or may have gone somewhere they shouldn't or even done something right. And just to ask them what they saw out there. So what guided their decision to act in the way they did. And often that's the first question to then guide you in what sort of feedback you need to give back to them. And generally, it helps encourage them to think about why they do things the way they do, what they're looking for, which is really that decision-making, that game sense that Nixie was talking about on Tuesday.
When it comes to how you ask these questions and how you communicate with players, and I think the key for athlete engagement is to, like I said before, people, if they feel they have buy-in or if they feel they have a say or they're being listened to, you'll get more out of them. And one of the things, you know, I noticed Nixie in his session the other week, one of our, you know, core competencies that we want to talk about is focus. And I think, as we all know, and those of you that are parents know, kids these days need instant gratification, instant satisfaction. They don't want to know long-winded stories. They don't want to know, you know, all this extra information. They just want to know what they've got to do, why they've got to do it that way. And I think if you're a parent, you'll know this. Kids these days are different than what we were like growing up. So when we were growing up, our coach said, do this. You didn't question it. You just did it because you were scared. You had a bit of a fear of authority. You didn't want to run laps. You didn't want to do push-ups. So if the coach said it, you just did it. Kids these days are a little bit different. Kids have so much more access to information than we had. So they're smarter than what we were back in the day. Maybe not street smart, because some of them are a bit out there, but they've certainly got access to a lot of information that we don't. Kids these days, and you'll all know this, they basically, if you tell them to do something, they're not just going to go and do it. They want to know why. Why do I have to do it? They then want to know, is there a better way to do it? And then third, and the biggest one, and you all know this, they're all going to want to know, is there an easier way to do it? So when you tell a kid what to do, like I said, they're going to go, why do I have to do it? Is there a better way? Is there an easier way? So the way you can get some buy-in from them is essentially ask them those questions when you're going through a drill, when you're explaining something. You could say to them, guys, what do you think a better way to do this drill might be? Or if it's not working, instead of getting mad and punishing them and making them do push-ups or whatever, ask them, how can we make it better? How can we make this drill better? What's boring about this drill? So I think you know, the way we engage and keep our kids focused is really, really important. And if you don't allow them to have a say, they will switch off really quick. So you've all got on your team light counters. Every single one of you has a light counter on your team. So a light counter is this kid that when you're talking, it's going, all right, looking at the roof, counting the lights, all right, because you've lost them. They're not engaged, they're bored, they've switched off. And the first thing we do is blame them. You're not listening. Why aren't you listening to me? Pay attention, all right? But that's on you to keep their attention and to keep them focused. You can't just continually blame them for not listening. So, you know, the communication and engagement part of what we do is really, really important. And I think our coaches have got to focus on less talk, more do. And if you were to come and watch one of my SBL sessions, and a few people here are obviously involved in them, I don't have exact figures, but I would like to guess out of a 2-hour session, if you put a stopwatch on how often our players are actually still and I'm talking, it would be around the 10-minute mark. Guys that are involved in my sessions or have seen me coach, would that be fair? 10, 15 minutes out of a 2-hour session of me actually talking and the players not doing anything. Whereas when we go to a junior level, it's the reverse. The coaches only practice for an hour and they spend 30, 40 minutes talking, and the kids got to sit there listening. And the coach thinks they're doing the right thing. The coach thinks they're being instructive and teaching, but the kids are switched off. They're not engaged, and you're not achieving what you could if you had better athlete engagement. In half the time, you could achieve the same amount as long as you had better athlete engagement. You know, I think what I've noticed is a lot of coaches, they get it around the wrong way when it comes to practice and games. I watch a lot of coaches coach at practice, and they do a lot of standing around talking. The kids are switched off. The kids are bored. They have long lines of kids waiting to get a shot. Coaches, you know, spend a lot of time talking, and then they get to a game and they expect the kids to just all of a sudden switch on and be able to play at this level that they've never practiced at before. And that's around the wrong way. Your practices should be more upbeat, more pressure, more tempo, more engaging than a game. So that when it comes to an actual game, this is easy. A game is easy for them. But, you know, I see a lot of our kids walk out of practice, out of HBF Arena, and they wouldn't even have to wash their jersey between the next session because they haven't sweated not once. Because out of an hour session, they've spent 45 minutes standing there listening to you talk. So I think putting them in those situations that are upbeat, game-like, pressure, where they feel they're constantly engaged, they're constantly a part of what's happening, they're buying in, will get you a better result come game day instead of just turning up and yelling and screaming on game day and expecting your kids to just, you know, go out there and play. And I think I'd like to think I'm a good example of that. If you come and watch me at practice, yeah, I'd probably look like a lunatic. But if you come and watch me on game day, I look like I'm asleep. So I don't think it's important that you need to fire the kids up and expect them to be able to do what they need to do on game day. I don't think it's possible, if you haven't done it in practice. So I'd ask you all to sort of assess yourself and be honest with yourself, you know, when it comes to your practices, and really take a look at yourself. And if you've got a team manager or a friend or a parent that's sitting on, maybe not a parent, stay away from parents. If you've got a friend or someone that can help you on the sideline in practice, get them to put a stopwatch on you and actually stop how long the kids are standing still while you're talking, as opposed to how long they're being active.
And just on that one, Andrew, just a question here from that. We seem to be slow starters of the Wolves. What you're talking about there, is that actually, do you think is a reason why we're so slow to start games? We're not mentally switched on for that reason you just talked about?
Yeah, look, possibly. To be honest, game day preparation, and I don't want to get too far off topic onto this, but I would think, in my experience, I watch coaches go on a 20, 30-minute sermon before a game, and they try and pump up their players, and they try and, you know, go through everything they've ever taught them, and they go on these massive long pre-game speeches. And as soon as the whistle blows and the game starts, your kids run out there like an absolute fairy. They have no idea what's going on. They just run around in circles, and everything you've told them just goes straight out the window. I would think possibly reason for slow starts is that maybe the kids are probably not, I agree with Nat, probably not used to or attuned to training at an intensity that is conducive to playing that way in a game, but also because they've probably spent 30 minutes bored out of their minds listening to you go on a sermon and try and pump them up. And it's not like the old footy days where you get the smelling salts and the coach would slap you around and you run through a brick wall. It's not like that. all right? And you can't expect, if you've never trained that way, you can't expect your kids to go out and play that way. You know, it's like if you had a greyhound, for example, and all week long it just sat on the couch and you just patted it and fed it treats. And then on race day, you expect it to just chase the rabbit like an absolute lunatic. It's not going to do it. It's going to look at you like, what the hell are you going? Where's the couch? But we do this with our kids. We practice at such a low intensity and we spend all this time talking and thinking we're teaching. And then it comes to game day and we wonder why they can't execute under pressure or why they can't perform the skill set that we've taught them at practice, because they haven't done it to a level that is conducive to being in practice to be able to do it in the game. So I think you've really got to look at how you structure your practice. And we'll go on to session planning a little bit later in the thing, but you know, I do agree it's probably part of it, Nat. I don't have all the answers as to why. I think one of the theories is possibly as well, you think about it, by the time the kid gets to a game on a Friday or on a Sunday, he or she has spent 20 minutes in the car with his real coaches, the parents, all right, and they've been telling him what he should do and who he should pass to and how he should play and who he should listen to, and then they get to the game and they're probably just overloaded with information. I would also say, and we'll get back to this a little bit in some session planning, but I think I just want to stay on the communication and the engagement part. I just think the message is ask questions. Don't, it's not about you. It's not about, a good friend of mine who coaches pro in Europe says, it doesn't matter how much you know, it only matters how much your players understand. And I think that's a really good thing to remember, and write that down if you want, because, you know, I think every coach thinks each training session is an opportunity for them to just get up and teach everything they know and show how knowledgeable they are. And, they think they're really teaching the kids, but, like I said, it doesn't matter what you know, it only matters how much they understand. So I think that's something really important to remember.
Just on that, sorry, does that answer your question as well, Cameron? Sorry?
Yeah, g'day, Andrew. Just a thing that we focus a little bit more on is coaching behaviours and the non-negotiables rather than the drills. So, very simple example, but even when we run into like an inbound drill or something like that, we're running at pace, we're running at game pace, we're coming off screens at game pace all the time. I can teach a kid to flash off a screen better, but I can't speed them up. So I'm trying to actually teach the behaviours that I want them to be playing with, and then trying to put the skills on top of that, rather than trying to teach them all the skills in the world. But if they're sloppy and walking around the court and doing all the things that we don't want to see, and is that what you're talking about with this sort of thing, is about how we're going to play, what it means when you're doing these things, rather than I can teach you all the skills in the world, but if you don't know how to apply them to the game, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, look, I think it comes down to, you're right, the things you're talking about, the non-negotiables, the standards, and I guess the style of play that you set, that's going to be a reflection. What you do every day in practice is going to come out on game night. So, I think Nixie mentioned the other day, something we talked about was mental toughness. And I think Chris had a question about, how do you teach mental toughness or how do you get mental toughness out of them? And I think it's your job as a coach to put them in situations in practice that are uncomfortable, that are going to raise their levels of anxiety, not make them anxious. I'm not saying you should be bullying and pressuring your kids, don't take me the wrong way, but practice should be uncomfortable, it should be hard, and games should be easy. But we go a little bit the other way. Practice is too easy, it's boring, it's the same drills all the time. We let the kids get away with whatever we want. We don't have a plan, we turn up unorganised, we don't engage them, and it's just an ever spiralling sort of situation where, we don't sort of model the behaviours we expect in our kids, and just we all turn up on game day and expect it to just happen. So certainly having those rules and non-negotiables is really, really important in how you structure your practice, and therefore what you get out of it on game day should be a reflection of what you've done in practice. What I would say, and I just want to go back to something just to finish up on communication and engagement. And I think Natalie mentioned something before, when you're coaching girls and how you go about it is different. I will be honest and say I haven't coached females in a long time. And I do understand there are some subtle differences, but I also believe that, the way you coach shouldn't really drastically change whether it's male or female. I agree there are some subtle differences, but at the end of the day, if you treat everybody the same, give the feedback the same way, not treat everybody the same, but hold everybody to the same level of account, then I don't think it really matters if it's boys or girls. But I do understand there are some sort of intricacies there that you do have to take into consideration. But I would say it's really, really important to get to understand your players and what makes them tick. And the only way you can do that is to communicate and ask questions. And I'll give you some examples. Like there's certain players on my SBL team that I know I can just chew them out, say whatever I want, yell and carry on, and they will take it. And I could say to certain players on my team, your mother's ugly, and they'll go, yes, coach, she is. You're right. Yes, coach. Yes, coach. There are other players, if I said, I think you've got to try harder, they would break down and wouldn't be able to take the feedback. So you've got to understand how certain players in your group tick and how to give that feedback. Got to be conscious these days with, kids and the bullying and the peer pressure and so on. If you address certain kids in a manner that embarrasses them, you're going to do more harm than good, even though your intent was to just try and, pump that kid up or hold that kid accountable. So you really got to learn how to coach your players. And, like I said, I'll use Seb, for example, because he's in this chat. I know I can pretty much say whatever I want to Seb, and he's going to get out there and do it. But to be fair, he says whatever he wants back to me as well. So there was a session a few weeks ago where he told me to F off, and one of my assistant coaches came running after me and said, what are you going to do? You're going to kick him off the team? And I said, first of all, if I kick Seb Salinas off this team, I'd lose my job. And secondly, it's not a big deal. I'm giving him feedback. He's giving me feedback. We move on with life. So I think I have that relationship with Seb that I would take that. And I think you've got to figure out who you have those relationships with, and how to get through to those guys. But there's other guys on my team that I've got to really mollycoddle and really talk gently to and, try different ways. And there's other guys that, you need to pump them up and tell them they're the man to get the best out of them. So you really got to learn how to, engage your players. And when it comes to giving feedback, I would just be honest, fair, and just I hear people talk about, the positive, negative, positive, or the shit sandwich, we call it, where you start a conversation with a positive, hit them with a negative in the middle, then finish with a positive. I don't subscribe to that theory. I don't think every time I tell someone some bad news, I have to tell them some good news. That's my job as a coach, to deliver feedback. But I have to do it fair and balanced. I can't always be delivering bad news and never any good news. So I think that's really, really important. But just to finish up, I would say as coaches, we're really, really good at giving feedback. We're not good at taking it. And I think that's something we've really got to change. You've got to be able to take feedback from the people that count, not from parents. Don't take feedback from parents. They don't know what they're talking about. Take it from your players. Take it from your assistant coaches. Take it from people you trust. And ask them, what'd you think of that session? And Seb, nod your head if I'm telling the truth here, but I meet with my players and I say to Seb, what do I need to do better? Tell me what I'm not doing well. And I ask my players these questions, and they get the opportunity to tell me. Now, admittedly, most of the time they probably don't tell you the truth, or maybe not be as harsh as they might want to be, but I certainly think giving them the opportunity to provide you with some feedback is really, really important. I want to move on to something, the next part of it is around session planning. And I think because some of you sort of asked some questions about, how we practice and your session plan and things like that. If I could just sort of break it down like this, again, I think we often have our sessions that are too relaxed, too much talking, not enough action, and we're not really pushing and challenging our kids enough. So some keys that I would use to having my session be really upbeat is, first of all, to be planned. Always have a plan. I always come to practice with a plan. Now, whether we deviate from the plan is one thing, or whether we get everything off the plan is another, but I always have a plan. What I think happens is a lot of coaches will come to a practice session. They've got an hour. Let's say we've got an hour. They'll go a 10-minute warm-up, or 10 minutes shooting, 10-minute ball handling, 10-minute offense, 10-minute defense, and 10-minute game. And they'll pick those 6 sort of categories, and they'll do 10 minutes of those things, and they'll do the same thing every time. You know, the same, we start the same way, we finish the same way, we do it in the same order, we do all our defense in a block, all our offense in a block. Something that I'm really big on is in the game of basketball, you don't ever play 10-minute defense in a block of 10 minutes. You don't ever play offense in a block of 10 minutes. Your offense, your defense, still defense. It's always chopping and changing with the flow of the game. So I like to have my practices like that as well. I don't ever just do all my defensive drills in a line. I'll do a bit of defense, bit of offense, bit of defense, bit of gameplay, and you know, I sort of mix up the pattern to my practice session. Your kids should never come to training knowing exactly what they're going to be put through. Like obviously warm-ups and things like that, they don't change. Those things we have to do, but your kids should never really know what the drill progression or what the session is going to be like. You should be, you know, keeping them on your toes, but you also should be able to read your kids as well and have a plan. So, read your kids and be able to deviate from the plan. So if I turn up to practice and I see my guys are a little bit grumpy and a little bit down or tired, I'm not going to do a drill to start my practice it requires them to be incredibly focused. I'm going to do something that's a little bit loose, a little bit fun, a little bit up-tempo, and get them sort of, you know, feeling a little bit of excitement rather than, oh, I'm at practice again, this sucks, or, you know, I've been doing overtime at work, or for kids, it's, oh, you know, I've got a lot of schoolwork and my mum's been pressuring me. You've got to vibe off them. And vice versa, if they turn up running around like lunatics, okay, and they're all upbeat, they're all hyper, they're all crazy, you don't want to start your practice with a drill that requires a lot of teaching or a lot of discipline, because they're going to be just running around all over the place. You might want to just go straight into a game and play a game straight off the bat. All right, so it tires them out a little bit. It sort of gets the juices sort of flowing and, you know, gives them an opportunity to sort of ease into a practice on their terms rather than them coming with a mindset that's not going to align to your exact plan. Because I think we spend a lot of time trying to stick to our plan and run a session that the kids just aren't vibing with and they're not buying into. And we keep trying to flog a dead horse. And again, we punish them, make them do push-ups, make them do suicides, whatever. We're just wasting time. So I think being able to go with the flow, if your drill's not working, ask why. If it's still not working, move on. Like there's no point trying to do a drill for 10 minutes that they're not enjoying, you're not enjoying, they're getting frustrated, you're getting frustrated. Move on. Something that's really important, and again, I do this with my adults, because to be honest, my senior men's players are just bigger versions of kids. They're really just the same. That what I do with them is mini games. So if I feel that the session is dragging on a little bit, or they're sick of my voice or whatever, we'll just do a mini game, just a 3-minute game. A 3-minute game, just throw the ball up, guys, let's play. All right, it gets them focused again, it gets them energized, gets them sort of out of the mundane or the monotony of the drill that you were doing. And then you can maybe come back to that drill later on, or put it in the bank and do it next week, or do it on Thursday. It doesn't all have to be done, you know, that day. Because again, if we were to do a normal practice block, we'd have a 10-minute game at the end. Now, what I can do is I can break that 10-minute game down into 5 little 2-minute games if I wanted to. And I can do them at specific points in my practice where I would focus on, you know, certain parts of the drill that wasn't working. I can focus on that in a game. And I'll give you an example, because when I say this to coaches, they say, oh, but Andrew, aren't you just rewarding them for mucking around, or you're giving them a game because they were behaving poorly? And my answer to that is, well, not really. There's a reason why they're behaving poorly, and there's a reason why they're bored, or there's a reason why the drill's not working. So it's not a punishment. It's me just trying to find another solution, trying to find a solution as to why it wasn't working. And the reason I choose mini games is what I would do in a mini game. Now, let's just say I was focusing on defensive, guarding your man one-on-one. So your defensive positioning, containment, whatever. Let's just say I was focusing on that in a drill and it wasn't working. When I then go to the mini game, that is all I focus on. So in that 2 minutes that they're playing, I'm not yelling out good shot, good pass. All I'm talking about is defensive containment, footwork, stance, positioning off on the ball and all that sort of stuff. So I'm using that 2-minute block to still keep the focus on the drill that I was teaching initially, but I'm doing it in a way now that has broken the monotony. They're getting a bit of a kick from playing a game, but I'm still coaching the hell out of that one facet or that one skill that I was trying to teach initially. So I haven't thrown the drill out totally. I've just gone, okay, this drill's not working. It's boring. They're over it. Let's play a game, but I'm going to focus the hell out of defensive containment in that drill. And then I could do it again later on in practice. And by the end of the practice, I've still had my 10-minute game. But instead of it being 10 minutes of rubbish, kids just playing full court transition, or it's at the end of practice and they're tired, it's been 10 minutes of really focused, short, sharp, controlled scrimmages, focusing on the things I want to get out of the session rather than just giving them a game for the sake of playing a game. So that's sort of, you know, a bit of approach I take to planning my session, that I try to always have a plan. Don't be set in blocks. Try and flow and mix it up a little bit and you know, let the players have some say on what we're doing. I always remove myself from certain drills as well. So again, an hour for your players of listening to you talk is too much. They need a break from you, and you probably need a break from yourself as well. All right. So what I do, and for some of you that have assistants, I have a designated drill in my practice every week that I don't run. My assistants run it every week, and I just remove myself totally. And it gives me 10 minutes to refresh, gives me 10 minutes to sort of, you know, think about my approach and how things are going, and evaluate and assess the session. But it also gives the players a fresh voice and a different sort of focus than instead of hearing my voice. So if you've got an assistant, the best thing you can do is engage them. And to be honest, I want it to get to a point where out of my 2-hour practice, I might only be running the show for 20 minutes and my assistants are doing the rest. Because then I can sit back and oversee, I can watch, I can evaluate, I can talk to my players one-on-one, I feel I can get more out of not being so intensely involved in every drill and letting the players be in the drill and let me evaluate it. So I think that's something, if you've got assistants, you really need to try and do that as well. Again, to break the monotony, to keep the athletes engaged, and try and get better buy-in out of them. Now, if you coach little kids, if you ask them, for example, if you say, hey guys, what could make this drill better? You're going to get some hairy answers, right? So they're going to say things like, if you coach 8-year-olds or 10-year-olds, they're going to say, oh, can we be Ninja Turtles? All right, cool. And a coach-centered coach would go, no, don't be stupid. That's silly. If you make any more dumb suggestions, you're running. All right, that's what a coach-centered coach would say. An athlete-centered coach would say, great idea. How are we going to make that work? Why don't you guys be the bad guys? You guys be the Ninja Turtles. The Ninja Turtles have got to chase the guys, whatever it might be. Use their idea to, you know, let them feel like they've got some engagement and some buy-in. You know, if you coach 15-year-old boys and you say, guys, I know you know, what do you want to do? And they'd be like, oh, I'd rather play Fortnite. Great. There's your answer. Set up a game that mimics Fortnite in a basketball sense, you know, have them all with a ball and they've got to run around and knock each other out, whatever it might be. I mean, I obviously don't play Fortnite, but you know what I mean. If you ask the questions, they'll give you the feedback. It's then up to you to use that feedback in your teaching rather than just continue to say, this is what I'm doing. If you don't like it, you know, you can do push-ups. You know, just on push-ups, put your hand up and be honest if you've ever made your players do push-ups. I have. Put your hand up so I can see. Oh, yeah, cool. All right. Fraser didn't put his hand up, so he's obviously lying. But, you know, the amount of times I see coaches do push-ups. Now, you actually think about how long it takes to do 10 push-ups. If you're coaching a 10-year-old kid, it takes them probably 30 seconds, maybe up to a minute by the time you've yelled at them to do 10 push-ups. Now, they never do the 10 push-ups properly, and you're just wasting time. Because I've coached over 3,000 games of basketball. Not once have I ever seen a player in a game do a push-up. Yet, they've done a push-up in practice, every single practice for their entire life, but it's a skill they don't use in a game. Now, I know people are going to say to me, oh, yeah, but Andrew, it's building up their upper body strength and, you know, it's making them stronger. Bullshit. It's not. All right, and Jason, you can probably attest to this, but doing 10 push-ups once a week for a 12-year-old girl is not going to build her upper body strength. I've been drinking protein shakes once a week for 10 years and it hasn't made any difference to me. So doing something once and expecting a difference, it's not going to fly with me. Well, so what I would say is, I'm not saying you shouldn't punish your kids for lack of a better word, but don't make them do push-ups. The one thing they all hate is defense. All right? So if they're not doing what you want, don't make them do push-ups. Make them do 30 seconds of defensive slides across the keyway. It's basketball specific. It's a skill that they need to play the game. You still get to get mad at them and they still think it's a punishment. They don't like doing it anyway. It takes the same amount of time, but it's a basketball specific drill or it's a basketball specific punishment. So you're making them better players. You're making them a better defensive player. Now, it might be closeouts. It might be whatever. You can pick the punishment, but I would think wasting time doing push-ups in practice is just not a good use of time, because you all want more time, right? And this is what I find funny about coaches. They all complain they don't get enough practice time. They all complain they want to go 2 hours. They all want to do 4 sessions a week. But I promise you, if I coached your team, I could achieve what you achieve in 4 sessions in 1. Because you've got to be efficient in your session. You want more time, you want more practice, so you think you can do more teaching, but it's really so you can do more talking. All right, that's not what this is about. You've got to be more efficient in your practice, okay? Be more disciplined, put the players in situations where they're going to be uncomfortable, where they're going to stress, where they have to think, and you'll get more out of your 1 hour. Less time doing push-ups, all right? Less time talking, going on big, long sermons, less time doing all that. An hour is enough for you guys to get out what you need. And I'll put it to you this way. I mean, I think my SBL team practices for 4 hours a week. We have some of our wobble teams that are practicing more than my SBL team. We have under 12 wobble teams that are practicing more hours per week than my SBL team. That's concerning for me, because it makes me think that the coaches are doing A, way too much, and B, not the right stuff. If you need that much time to teach under 12s, now I know you're going to say to me, but your SBL players are better. They don't need as much skill development as the under 12s. It's comparative, right? Because my team's playing against teams that are that much better, you know, and don't be wrong, my team need just as much skill work as your team. So, you know, I think if you're more efficient in your practice and make the practice about your players and not you, you will achieve more come game day. I'll just quickly break if there's any questions there, and then I'll get on to the last thing we want to talk about is a bit of a drill progression and how we will work our way through.
Just go to sleep.
That's you, Julian?
Oh, yeah, talking to the boy who's just come out all weird.
Is there any questions so far?
I didn't know you got to unmute it then.
All right, cool. We'll move on then if there's no questions. All good. So the last thing we talked about, you know, those 10-minute blocks and how we use our session. And I'm not saying I don't do 10-minute blocks. I definitely do. I just don't do them in a set chronological order, like all defense or offense. But even within my 10-minute blocks, I break that down. So that's what I call my drill progression. So it might pay if you got a pen and paper to write these 3 things down. But 3 types of drills I focus on are pure, mixed, and combination. Now I'll break that down. So a pure drill. So pure drill is just one skill. We're just focusing on one skill. Okay. So it might just be ball handling, just simple ball handling, for example. Okay. Or it might be, you know, it could be a layup, even though I understand there are a couple of skills involved in the layup, dribbling and shooting, but it's still just, it's one focus point. So that's a pure drill. A mixed drill is 2 things. So it might be dribble pass or dribble shoot, combining 2 things into the drill. So that's a mixed. And then a combination is 3 or more. So it might be run, pass, jump, stop, dribble, shoot, whatever it might be. Again, all these different skills concepts packaged up into a drill. So pure, mixed, and combination. So if I have my 10-minute block of offense, for example, I'm going to do some individual offense. Within that 10-minute block, I'm going to break it down into those 3 things: pure, mixed, and combination. So the pure, because it's only one skill, that's where you do all your teaching. That's where you really can focus down on the nitty-gritty, the details. You know, you can spend a bit of time just doing, you know, one specific thing, footwork, ball handling, whatever it might be. But because it's only one thing, it's boring. So you can only do it for 2 minutes. Okay, so if you do your pure drill for 2 minutes, do all your teaching, and coaches, that's where you talk. Get all your talking out. Teach, explain, give demos. In that 2 minutes, teach like crazy. Then once they've done that for 2 minutes, I'll move into my mixed drill. Now in my mixed drill, that's the application phase. So you've got the teaching phase. Sorry, my mistake. That's the refinement stage. That's where they refine the skill. So you've got the teaching stage, the refinement stage. So what you will do is do a little bit less talk, less coaching, and let the player work on their skill. Let them refine it. Add in something that might make it a little bit more difficult, like competition. Now, I'll get into competition in a minute because I will come back to that. But you might add in something that's a little bit more challenging in the mixed part, and there's less of you. You're still coaching, but you're letting the player figure it out. They're refining their skills. But again, it's not that exciting, so you can probably only do it for 3 minutes max. The third part is the combination drill, and that's the application stage. So that's where they apply the teachings to a game-like situation. Now, that's where you then do what we call coaching on the fly. It's less about you. The players are doing the drill constantly, or they're doing the exercise, they're doing whatever for 5 minutes, and you're just giving instructions on the fly. You're not stopping it. So what we actually cover there is a couple of different learning methods, right? So we all know there are people that learn by watching, doing, listening, and all these types of things. By doing those different drill progressions, you can actually, give players who have different learning capabilities an opportunity to learn at their speed. Now, when you get to the combination stage, that goes for 5 minutes because it's less of you and it's more of them, and they're doing. They're applying the skills you've taught them, so you can get more out of them. So I don't know how good your maths are, but 2, 3, and 5, 10 minutes. Okay, so there's your...
Andrew, just on that one, mate, is there any difference in age groups with that breakup as well, like from under 12s compared to under 18s or SBL?
No, I would still do it. I would still do the same with little kids. You might not put as much in your combination. So you might not put 6 things in your combination part. You might only put 3 or 4. But your combination part is essentially your game. And that's kids learn by making mistakes. Kids learn by doing, right? They don't learn by you telling them. So if you've got to put them in that situation for 5 minutes where they're making mistakes, they're stuffing up, they're trying to apply the skill, it's game-like. I would definitely use that same method, whether it be through, under 10s or right up to SBL. And again, my SBL people in the room can attest that we'll do a drill and we might just do it 2 on 2. Now, then we might go 3 on 4, 4 on 4, 5 on 5, whatever it might be. We will progress through with different focus points. And the more we get into it, the more complex it gets. So if you want to do your teaching, coaches, I get it. You want to talk a lot. I get it. I get you want to teach. But you can't do that for 10 minutes because people will switch off. Kids will switch off. I mean, we as adults switch off. And this is obviously challenging for me right now to keep you guys engaged for an hour without any sort of back and forth. So imagine what a 8-year-old, a 10-year-old kid feels when you're trying to talk to them. They switch off. Because guess what? From the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep, there's someone telling them what to do or giving them instructions. Like from the moment before they even wake up, they're giving an instruction. And it's normally get out of bed, get your school clothes on, eat your breakfast, tidy up your room, get in the car. They're always being given instructions. Then they get to school and the teacher tells them what to do. All right, do this, do that, hand in this test, do this assignment, whatever. Then they get to practice and you tell them what to do. And all day long, they've had people telling them what to do and no one's ever asked them what they want to do. So if they're bored or switched off and you spend 10 minutes of your block talking, you're going to lose them after a minute. If not even a minute, it probably only takes 15 seconds max to lose a 10-year-old's interest. I'm not a parent. A lot of you would be. You can tell me if I'm wrong. But from the kids I'm a coach and I'm around, their interest, you've got to keep them pretty much on the go. Otherwise, they will switch off. So break down your 10-minute block into those pure, mixed, and combination, parts. And like I said, do all your teaching in the early part. Teach like crazy. Then step back, let them learn and refine by themselves. Then let them apply for 5 minutes. Now, if you can do all that in your 10-minute drill, now it's actually tough to do, but the more you practice it, I can do it now without even thinking. It's just something that happens, I just sort of progress my way through a drill. Now, I guess my question to you guys would be, and I know it's a bit of a rhetorical one because you can't answer, but do you think you have to do your pure, mixed, and combination in that order? Would be my question. Nod, shake, nod your head, shake your head. All right. So I think the answer is you don't. So you could actually start in the combination portion, the most tricky portion of your drill, the hardest part. You could actually start in that. then scale your way back. Because often what we do when we start at the teaching, we assume they don't already know it, and we're teaching them stuff they know how to do. So if you start in the application phase, you can actually assess what they know how to do. And you can actually see, actually, he made good reads in a game-like situation, but his footwork was wrong. So you can then scale it back, and you can actually go, right, well, guys, we're going to do a 5-minute drill. It would be our combination drill. And you could then look at it and then go, okay, guys, good. Now we're going to scale it back. We're going to take out the defense, for example, and we're just going to focus on the passing and the dribbling. And then you can see, great, who can do that, who can do that. And then you can go, hey, listen, we really need to get our ball handling down. Let's just go back to a pure drill and focus on that to finish the drill. 2 minutes, finish the drill, done. Now, again, you could gauge that by your players' attitudes. So if they're all hyper and, going crazy, don't try and do the teaching first. Start in the application phase. Let them go apply. Let them go run around. Let them go try the drill. Let them make mistakes. Let them stuff it up. Then scale it back, do a little bit of teaching, see how they react. Then once you know exactly what they need to be taught, spend the last 2 minutes of your 10 minutes teaching. So they've still had the same amount of teaching. It's just in a different order. You get a different interaction out of them, and you get them to sort of, learn and do things on the fly by themselves. Because what I see mostly when I go and watch junior training sessions is the coaches, they have a starting point and an end point in mind, and they just coach however long it takes them to get there. And I see coaches at under 12 level doing the same drill for 20 minutes. Right? That is the most boring shit you can ever do. All right? If any of your single drills, you can have a drill block of 10 minutes, but if you were doing the same drill for 10 minutes, those kids are switched off. All right? So you need to learn how to progress through the drill, how to break it down. That's what we call it at sort of my level. We talk about our drill breakdown and how we get from our starting point to our finishing point. But I think sometimes we just try and coach a drill, and this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it till it's right, and I'm going to talk, and I'm going to yell, and I'm going to get frustrated, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to say you're not listening, and I'm going to blame you, and I'm going to make you do push-ups, and we spend all this time doing all this stuff that could be fixed if us coaches had a better understanding of how to engage and progress through our drills. Okay? And like I said, you've got to know how your players react to different things. You've got to know who are the smarter players and who takes a little bit of time to figure things out. So then you can actually, within your own session, have different groups working in different parts of a drill. So you might have a couple of kids that just can't do a certain skill. You might start them in the pure stage, the teaching phase. You might have 3 other kids down the other end in the combination stage, working at their level. And that's really tricky to do. And if you've got assistants, it's easier. But so then you're not holding some kids back to a lower level who can already go on to the next. So these are all things that, you've got to be able to do in your practice. And if you don't think like this, or if you think I'm wrong, then I would encourage you, and you're allowed to think that, by the way, I would encourage you to go away and actually assess how you coach and think, am I getting the most out of my sessions? Am I getting the most out of my kids? Because I'll be honest with you, I used to coach a certain way that I no longer coach that way anymore. I used to think coaching was all about me, and I would just do all the yelling and screaming, and I would jump up and down and throw my hands around, and I've totally changed the way I coach now, because I've realized that I can get more out of my players by having them be a part of what we're doing and having them be involved, rather than them just doing it because I said they had to. And you end up coach-centered coaching. If you do coach-centered coaching, eventually you're going to end up fat, bald, grey hairs in your beard, and wearing glasses. Okay, that's how you're going to end up looking like. All right. With athlete-centered coaching, it's much more enjoyable. All right, you get more interaction with your players, you get better buy-in, and hopefully you'll get a better result. But again, knowing your players is really, really key. I get asked this question a lot, and someone might want to ask it already, but I get asked the question, that's all good, Andrew, but what about if you've got kids that are being naughty, or what about if you've got kids that have ADD and, they don't listen and they, whatever. We've all got those naughty kids, right? I've got one on my SBL team. His name's Reece Maxwell. All right. He's the naughty kid. All right. But you got to find a way to engage that kid. So what I do with my naughty kid, or if you've got a kid that's really good compared to the other players on their team and gets bored easily, I've got to find a different way to engage that kid. So I will have the kid that's naughty or doesn't listen all the time, I will have them take on a little bit of not an assistant coach role, because I don't want to put them at a higher level than anyone else on my team, but I will sort of give them some added responsibilities to ensure that they're paying attention and that they're listening. And same with a better kid. I would pair the better kid up with the weakest kid on the group. Often we pair the two best kids up together. Now, there are times you have to do that, but if you want to get the best out of your teams, if you've got to do a specific drill, put the best kid with the weakest kid and put him or her in an instruction sort of teaching role, and give them some levels of accountability that are bigger than just sort of being a player. You know, make them little mini coaches, little mini assistants. You know, ask the naughty kid or your athlete-centered feedback. So your naughty kid or your light counter that's not listening, say to them, Johnny, Sally, what's the best way to do this drill? What do you think is the best way to do this drill? Why is this drill boring? Instead of saying, Johnny, listen, pay attention. You never listen. All right? They never listen because you're boring. So change your message. Don't blame Johnny for you being boring. Find a way to get Johnny to be engaged in what you're saying and what you're doing. And I do that all the time with my SBL players. I'll let them have a say. I'll ask them, what do you want to do? Or, you know, or sometimes they tell me, they'll say, that doesn't work. And I'll go, yeah, you're right, actually. And they'll do, let's try this. Or I'll ask them, what do you think? I'll give them two options. What do you guys want to do? Oh, let's do that one. Cool. I'm okay with that. Because they then feel like they're having some ownership and the team, they're part of what's happening and not just being told. So I think that's really, really important. But, you know, you're going to have some players that are not real bright on your team. You know, that's a given. Generally the big men, or your tall players are generally not real bright. I don't know why that is. But, you know, you're going to have some players that I'll tell you a reason why I think big guys are not real bright at the end of this. But you're going to have some players that learn at different paces, some players that don't understand terminology and understand different things. But by asking them, what do you need from me to get this right? What are you not understanding? How can I explain it better? You will save so much time. Trust me, because the amount of times we talk and yell as coaches and expect, you know, our players to just do what they've told, and when it really could have been fixed with a simple, what don't you understand? How can I help you make this better? You can fix it on the spot, and you can move on. And then you'll end up having a much longer coaching career and not end up looking like me. So I'll tell you why I think big guys aren't real bright. Just to finish off, I'll tell you a little story. I was coaching in college. I was coaching a guy. His name was Martin. He was 7'1", all right? So he was really big. And like most big guys, he was a horrible free throw shooter, like Shaq, Dwight Howard. These guys, they can't shoot free throws. I don't know what it is with the big guys. And so the sports psychologist guy said to him, Martin, every night before you go to sleep, I want you to lay down, and when your head hits the pillow, just lie back and just go through the motion of shooting the shot and visualize the shot. Visualize the shot, visualize the action, and just do this visualization 10 times every night before you go to bed. And he was like, yeah, cool. So anyway, after a couple of days, I went up to him in practice and I said, Martin, how's the visualization going with your free throw shooting? He's like, oh yeah, really, really good, coach. I made 6 out of 10. Think about that. He imagined missing 4 shots. He visualized missing 4 shots. So even his imagination is stupid. So that's why I have a bit of a thing that big guys aren't real bright. You know, like Robbie Huntington, not real bright. I know he's a school teacher, but it's only primary school. He's not real bright. Joel Vingina, not real bright. I don't know what it is with these big guys, but if we can find a way to get through to them, then you guys will have something that you know, a secret that I don't, because I can't get through to big guys. So, but that's the end of it, guys. I feel like we covered a lot, maybe too much. Happy to sort of open it up now to any questions. I think we're right on 7 o'clock, but to be honest, I've got absolutely nowhere to be, nowhere to go. So anyone that wants to stay in, we can chat and I can answer any questions. Probably threw a lot at you, and I know you're probably thinking, wow, I can't do that at my level. Or my kids won't pick that up. I hear that a lot from coaches. The first thing they say is, oh, that won't work at under 10s. And, you know, I always find that response to be a little bit, you know, we're making an excuse for, we're trying to tell our players what they can't do. Why don't you try it? Why don't you try implement some of it? Why don't you scale things back to do it at that level? But I certainly think you can take on board a lot of the things that I've said around how you communicate, how you coach, athlete engagement, how you progress through a session, and, you know, different things. And like I said, I'm happy to have any questions and stick around. If anyone wants to leave, I won't be offended. But if anyone wants to stick around and chat, I'm more than happy to do that as well. So thank you.
Hey, thanks very much, Andrew. Just before everyone goes, just thanks very much for coming along. Obviously, this session as well will be taped or recorded. Nixie's doing that for us, and we'll make it available. We'll put it on some way to communicate to everybody. Also, just let everyone know, we plan on having at least a couple of these every week for the foreseeable future.